After considering the domain, the next step is to look at the host your website is located on. I know that Pluralsight's main target demographic is computer developers, so I'm not going to go into exactly what hosting is. If you're not familiar with this term, I recommend doing a search on what is hosting. You will find a mountain of information for your consumption. Similar to domains, hosting has a lot of old rumors surrounding it that people go back and forth on trying to determine exactly how hosting impacts SEO. Back in the day, there was a rumor that speed mattered to your rankings. This now is no longer a rumor, but SEO gospel truth. Both Google and Bing have announced that speed plays an important role in their search algorithms. There are hundreds of different ways to speed up your hosting. For all my Unix hosting, I add a simple code to my .htaccess file that helps. I will talk more about what the .htaccess file is and how to use this code in a couple of slides. If you're already familiar with the .htaccess file, you can find the code I use to speed up my websites in the Pluralsight's exercise file. However, if you want to do some further reading on the subject, I recommend an article from Search Engine Land that shares 29 solid recommendations that will help in your website's speed. Next up in the SEO rumor mill is shared hosting. It was believed that early search engines would possibly penalize you if you shared a host with a bad website. It was never determined if this was true, and if it was, it doesn't really matter these days. Now search engines are sophisticated enough to understand that shared hosting can have hundreds and thousands of different customers. However, there is one caveat to note about shared hosting. Google feels it is bad practice to have all your sites on a shared platform and to interlink your domains together. For Google, this is seen as a link network, and they have been known to penalize such networks. Bing, on the other hand, doesn't seem to have an issue with it. The uptime of a server is important, and apart from obvious damage to your website's performance, frequent crashes negatively affect SEO. Often the uptime of a website doesn't have as much to do with the hosting company as it has to do with the user using the hosting company. Pages that do not exist, or 404 pages, are the biggest offenders when search engines are determining the value of a website. Search engines want to provide the best results to their users. And when a website is down, for whatever reason, you can bet that the search engine will devalue the result. The best way to determine if you have 404 pages is to look at your Google and Bing Webmaster Tool. Both provide you a detailed report about what they are crawling, and since we are trying to please them, it's best to identify and fix these errors. Stay tuned for the next slide, which will go more in depth with Webmaster Tools. The final hosting rumor, and by far the most popular, is your host location. I've heard for years about the importance of hosting your domain on a server that is located in the country you are targeting. Google doesn't care where your server is located. Bing, however, does care, but there are several other factors that are also important. For Google, there are only two current factors that matter when they are considering a website's location. First, what you enter into Google Webmaster, which we'll talk about shortly, and second, your links that are pointing to your website, called backlinks. I once had a friend purchase a website that had thousands of backlinks from Indonesia. When you did a search on his domain, Google added on his search results that this website was from Indonesia. He had that site for years, and even though he never changed his hosting, which was in San Jose, California, he couldn't convince Google that the site was not in Indonesia. Bing looks at three things: the IP address of the server, which tells Bing where your server is located, domain extensions, particularly country domain extensions, and geo-meta tags. Geotagging isn't server-side, but rather found in the meta tags of the web page. We'll talk more about meta tags in the next module.